Uh, I have to press continue. Sorry. Okay, for those of you who might not know me, I'm Kate. I run Northern Yarn, which is a wool shop in Lancaster. I'm there tonight. I started my business 5 years ago. It was my own kind of personal big blast. Lots of things happened at once. We'd moved back from London to the northwest. I was looking for work. The environment was a complete change to the city. We were surrounded by sheep and farmers, and the girls were making friends with sheep farmers. And then I tried to find some British wool, and found it was really hard to get locally. And then our wool shop closed down. So that was kind of the final peg, and I decided to go for it and wanted my business to focus on locally sourced British wool where I could. And it was a whole new world for me, especially having yarn processed. And I wanted to share some of that world with, my customers and friends, and take you on the journey with me, which is why 3 years ago, I organised an event at the museum, and Maria and Zoe and Andrea kindly came along and talked to us about farming and what they do, and British wool. And it was a fab night, really, really good. And it was really nice to listen and see what they do from an insider point of view. So I know I've seen that farmers are resorting to burning fleeces again. And I know I've had a lot more calls from farmers asking if I can take more fleece, which I would love to do. But just with financial and storage reasons, there's only so much I can do. And, the answer has to be bigger than that, I think. So I thought it'd be nice to revisit that discussion, and sort of in view of the pandemic and Brexit and how that's affected farming and the wool industry. I don't think there's a hard and fast solution, but I think as a society we are making better choices about clothing and food and where we buy from. But I thought, I attended a talk a few weeks ago with Maria and Zoe after the Farmers Yarns event, and it was really interesting, talking about, how we got to this stage, with synthetic fibres being created and processed outside of the UK cheaply. So I thought, that'd give us a few starting points to talk to our panel about. But first, they're going to introduce themselves and show you some pictures and talk to you about what they do. So first up, Maria Benjamin. So hi, Maria. I think I met you at Woolfest in 2016. I'd just started Northern Yarn, and you were there with your gorgeous rare breed Castle Milk Moritz sheep, and you were happy to talk to me about your life on the farm, and just totally love your ethos. And I immediately wanted to stock your wool, and yeah, you're great. So how are things with you? And could you tell us a bit about life at Dodgson Wood?
Yeah. No, that was it was amazing actually meeting you, because I was so I had no deep understanding of wool at all, having come into farming as an artist, really, not as a farmer, and then just seeing this wool being wasted. So it was great to have a wool person like you like my wool and want to stock it. And I remember texting John saying, oh my God, I met someone that wants to stock our wool. I was so excited because I had no idea whether I would have spent a lot of money processing wool and then it would just be wasted. So it was great to have that endorsement. And I think, I love the shop and what you do, and the fact that you, that you buy raw fleece and turn it into amazing knitting wool. A lot of shops just wouldn't bother, they just buy it in, but having that connection with farmers I think is really important. So I'll just show you a quick slideshow, so for people that haven't seen our farm on Instagram or anything, I can share a little bit of what we do. So I'll do a screen share now. I'll go here, share, which will hopefully work. And then play. Can everyone see John's baldy head?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So John, this is John here. He's my partner. He's been a farmer pretty much his whole life. He took over the family farm when he was 20. He's 60 now. He's not shearing anymore. So this is a young friend of ours, Rachel, and she's shearing some of our sheep, and John's wrapping the fleeces. I wrap the fleeces with him as well. So this is Cheviot sheep that we have. We have our main flock is Cheviots, and they live up on the fell. So John is a born and bred farmer, and I came to the farm, I think in 2015. Yeah, 2015. And I guess from an outsider point of view, what he had begun to take as normal in terms of wool costing a farmer to give it to the wool board rather than it making any money, and it used to make money, it just become the norm. And so obviously sometimes when you come in with fresh eyes and a bit of enthusiasm, then you can think about, you know, oh, well, what can we do with this? And that was when I thought, well, let's go to you know, just Googled wool and found, you know, Woolfest, and I went to Woolfest to see what they did. So this is another picture. So that's John in the middle, you know, a year or so before when he was doing a little bit of shearing. And this is his dad, who still works on the farm, who's in his 80s. So it's a very sort of traditional family farm, really. And these are some of our Cheviots and their fleece. Amazing, hardy sheep, but they produce fantastic, really fantastic wool, and quite a lot of it. So they're a great breed for us to keep because they look after themselves, except for this one, you can see is absolutely full of moss. So that would have been really annoying when we sheared it, because it'd be like, we can't do much with that wool. It doesn't come out. And these are, so after thinking about wool and what we could do with our Cheviot, I kind of wanted my own sheep. So I did some research, and I got some rare breeds. So these are Teeswaters, which have incredible fleece. And these are Castle Milk Murrets. That's not a great picture, but these are Castle Milk Murret sheep, which are really pretty wild. And this looks an idyllic picture, but this is us trying to get them back onto our farm. They've escaped, and actually feel quite proud of themselves, I think. And here's some more Castle Milk Murrets. So these are, this one you can see is purebred, and this one here is a crossbred. So that's crossed with a black blue-faced Leicester. Oh no, it's crossed with a blue-faced Leicester. And the blue-faced Leicester must have had a black recessive gene, because some came out white like this one, and some came out this dark color. So since we had that blue-faced Leicester, we've now got a black blue-faced Leicester, so they all have this lovely, very dark brown tone. They all look exactly like this, which is really, it's a nice, because the Castle Milk Murret fleece is fantastic, but it's quite a short staple. So when they're crossed, you get with the blue-faced Leicester, you get a longer staple. It's a easier wool to spin. And these are things that I just learned as we went along. I didn't know any of this sort of stuff when we started. So again, this is a Castle Milk Murret, and this is her lamb, the blue-faced Leicester cross lamb, which we call a Castle Blue. Here's some more of our sheep. You can see a lot of farmers, they like just one type of sheep. And I think a lot of the local farmers thought we were a bit mad to have so many different breeds. You can see in the front, here's a Teeswater, and then we've got some Hebrideans, and you know, we've got the Cheviots here, and we've got some other breeds as well. But we keep all these different breeds because they grow at different rates, which is, in terms of a meat trade, is very good for us. We can sell the sheepskins, and also because we use their fleece, then that means that adds more value. But for a lot of farmers that just go to the livestock auction. And at the livestock auction is mainly supermarket buyers. They all just want, you know, a kind of carcass sheep. So they'll want a Texel sheep, so all the chops are the same size and the sheep are all the same size, and they wouldn't pay anything for these sheep, these rare breed sheep. You know, I did take one to auction once and it sold for £10, which is crazy, you know. So I never did that again. So this is some of our wool. It's, you know, normally this barn is in the winter is used for cattle, but they all go out in the summer, so it's empty and we can store big bags of wool here, ready for processing or going to the wool board. These are some of our wools that we have spun. So this looks like our Cheviot, and it's dyed by River Knits. Some of it we leave pure, and I think this is probably, don't know, Teeswater maybe. This is some of our Cheviot with our Sheer Delight label, and some orders going out to customers. And we sell some of our fleece raw to Japan, to one buyer in Japan. We have to organise her wool for sending out at the moment, and they really love British wool. There's very few sheep in Japan. Maybe, you know, just maybe a few hundred, more as almost like a zoo type situation for sheep. But they love, crafters love British wool, and so they really pay a premium. And so at Woolfest I met some buyers that fly over from Japan specifically to buy British wool, which is great for us. This is James Rebanks, so the writer, and he has an amazing flock of Hardwicks. And I met him, I think, at Westmoreland's show. I'd met him before, but I met at Westmoreland's show. I said, you know, you really should do something with your wool, because people would, you know, they love you and they would like to, they bought your book, but what else can they buy from you? You know, if you did something with your wool, I'm sure you'd sell it. And he just said, well, you take it and do something and then pay me when you've made some money, which is what I do now. So I've been doing that for the last few years. And it works out brilliantly. And one person who loves his wool is Masumi, who buys our wool and takes it to Japan. And she really wanted to meet James. So when she was over in the UK on a wool buying trip, I took her up to meet James. And this is him when he used to have Swaledales. He's got rid of them all now. He just keeps Hardwicks. But I love the jacket that she's wearing because Swaledale is her favourite wool, and that jacket she's wearing is made of Swaledale. And Swaledale's normally just seen as just waste, you know, maybe it goes for insulation or compost, but it's not seen as anything of value. But I think that jacket proves that you can actually, you know, make something beautiful with Swaledale. And so because she made that beautiful jacket, I thought I should make some jackets. So this is made from James Rebanks's Hardwick. And we also make bags. Lauren Laverne bought a bag. And I love that it fits an album. I think that's great. So it's a really nice collaboration with James. I give him a percentage of the profits. His name obviously sells some of the products for me, but it just sort of shows that you can add value to wool. And I think it's just important for farmers to see that if they do more with their wool instead of burning it, it supports so many other businesses. So the production of this bag supports the farmer, the shearer, the haulier to take it to be washed, the spinners and the washing place as well, the scourers. Then it's the weavers, and we use Woven in the Bone in Scotland. And then the bag maker is local to me, Sally. And obviously I make some money from it as well. So that's 8 different people that benefit from the sale of, from making these bags. So when you burn it, all that potential is gone. So I find it really sad that farmers are resorting to that. And I don't blame them because they're so busy. And, you know, not everyone has the time or the finances to invest in doing more with their wool. This is the amazing Joyce Campbell, who came down from Scotland a couple of days ago, and she brought some of her Cheviot hog wool with her, and we're just deciding what to do with that. So I set up a new business with Zoe, the woolist, who you'll be hearing from in a little bit, and another woman called Gloria, who works in fashion in London, but wants to work more in sustainable fashion. So we're working together to try and support farmers do more with their wool. So we're just starting up, and this, I think the wool from Joyce will be the first big project that we'll be doing as the flock. So it's quite exciting, and I'm really glad that it's with Joyce's wool, because she's a real farming hero. And there, I'll just end on what I love most, which is lambing time and looking after the sheep. I love the business that I run, but it all comes from farming, and for farming to not be a drudge, it needs to make money. And if we can help farmers make the wool profitable, that absolutely helps massively in farms being able to turn a profit, because a lot of upland farms especially really don't make profit, and with farm subsidies changing, it's a very difficult time for farmers. So that's why I'm really keen to do more than just my own business, but really see what I can do to support other farmers. Okay.
That was amazing. Thank you, Maria.
That's all right.
So interesting. I love all the things that you do, and it's just, you've so many ideas that just keep coming. I love it. It's fantastic. Thank you. Rachel. So Rachel Atkinson is here from Daughter of a Shepherd. Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for inviting me.
No, you're welcome. Thank you. It was a last minute. It's when I was looking at the article from last year with you and Andrea actually on the BBC.
Ah, right, yes.
Oh gosh, I must see if you're free. So yeah, that way. So yeah. You grew up with watching your dad shepherd a flock of Hebridean sheep. Is that right?
And kind of. He shepherded. He used to shepherd Suffolks.
Right.
But we're not actually a farming family. He was a lingerie salesman. So,
oh, wow.
So that was his full-time job.
Not made of wool.
No. So, and he got into shepherding because he's always loved dogs, and he used to train Alsatians to show at like police dog shows, doing that kind of training. And when me and my sister arrived, he got rid of the Alsatians and bought in a border collie, right, to train up to work sheep. And then obviously once he got the dog, he needed the sheep to work on. So the dog came first, then the sheep. And it was just very much a hobby that he did on evenings and weekends, training the dogs. And the sheep that he had, it was just a small flock. He used to move around for grazing. He had some agreements with the local council, so they'd graze common land that needed dealing with. Yeah. And he worked that way for years and years and years, and eventually packed in his sales work. And he was approached by an estate just outside York, the Escrick Park estate, who had bought a flock of Hebridean sheep to trial for conservation grazing. It was a little while ago now, but it was when the conservation grazing became of interest, and it was like, oh, this is something that we use the animals to graze land that's otherwise inaccessible, and they'll get rid of what we don't want on there, but look after what we need. Yeah. And the estate had bought the sheep and put them out on this, I think it's a 600-acre estate, and then realised that they needed to get them in. And had no way of doing it. So somebody put them in touch with my dad, and he started working there, and he'd been there for quite a long time. He just retired a few months ago. So that was his job, and he continued with breeding the border collies as well, which is his sort of big love.
True love, yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And I love you're a knitter. Did you learn to knit as a child?
Yeah.
I
think like many people, and then put it down when I was a teenager, and I went back to it. I was ill one summer and just going out of my mind with boredom, and Mum came to visit, and I was like, can you bring me some knitting needles and wool? I need something to do. And it just went from there. And then obviously seeing my dad out with the sheep, and we were visiting, it was probably about 7 years ago now. They just had their wool board checked through for the Hebrideans, and it amounted to what was about 3p a fleece it was valued at. And I couldn't believe it. And as a knitter, the Hebrideans are really beautiful dark sheep, and I would have quite liked to knit the wool, and I was like, it has to be worth more than this. It's like Maria said, there has to be more value in this than the price that's being put on it. And so they decided not to send the new clip to the wool board, and it was just being used around the estate for plugging hedges and protecting trees and things like that. And I agreed to buy it, and then I had to start the journey of finding somewhere to wash it and spin it and sell it.
It's a minefield.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, I never thought it would be. I mean, it was really interesting when I was looking for somewhere to spin the wool, but it was the minimum quantities. Some places would take it scoured and carded, other ones, and I kind of wrote a book before I got to a stage where I thought, right, we can go here.
Yeah, and a lot of the places that you need to deal with as well, they're still not on the internet, or it's word of mouth that you find out about places, and it's not easy. And like you said, the minimum quantities are quite high as well. So if you've only got 40 kilos, you're going to struggle to work with it. So I've got a storage unit as well that's full of fleece that I've been gathering for about 4 years now, from the same 2 breeds, to try and get enough to make it worth spinning. But hopefully it's going through this summer.
Oh, fantastic, because it's beautiful. Your yarn is gorgeous.
Thank you.
And I loved Ram Jam, so that was particularly taking wool that was considered waste, wasn't it? I think
it was. Yeah, I spun the Hebridean first, and then the shearer who had been shearing the Hebrideans said, would you be interested in buying any other fleeces? He said, I go round small holdings and people with backyard flocks, and they'll just be 5 or 6 fleeces, maybe 30 or 40 at other places, and they'll just say, oh, well, get rid of it for me or put it on the muck heap. And he gathered all that in for me, and then I got a text message at the end of the summer to say, I've got a trailer load for you. It was a bit more than I was expecting, but he'd gathered black and white fleeces. So we had those processed separately and spun as black and white, and then blended originally 2 greys from the black and white as well. So we had quite a nice palette created essentially from what was otherwise waste. And it's still kind of hard to believe that it was just going to go to waste, because it's perfectly good wool. Yeah,
it's beautiful. It's really lovely. Well, thank you very, very much. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me.
That's great. And I was going to say to everybody, all of our panel have beautiful products that they produce and sell on their websites. So I think we'll get those links up on the chat as well, so you can go and peruse and treat yourself to something lovely after the event. Okay, Zoe, I think we met, you came into the shop a few years ago, and we had a really long conversation about breed-specific wool, British wool. It went on for quite a while, and my mind was just blown with your PhD and the 72 breeds of British sheep. It's just fantastic. I talk about you a lot in the shop, and would you tell us a bit more about how that huge resource that you created is being used today, and how you're using it today too?
Of course, yeah. So I thought I'd try not to bore some of you that hopefully were there at the first one, but I thought I'd do a little bit of an overview of how it kind of came about and where the research is now, and then what I've been doing over the past, I want to say a couple of years, but it's a little bit longer than a couple of years now, isn't it? But time's flying. So let me share the screen. There we go. Perfect. Hopefully everyone can see that. So I thought I would just kind of start by giving you a little bit of an overview of the PhD research. So I started with, I was really lucky. I was working down in London. I'd done my master's down there at London College of Fashion, working in the fashion industry. I was really passionate about I'd had this amazing creative experience of making a knitwear collection and seeing it going down a catwalk. And then I was sat in front of a computer for 12 hours a day, either basically ripping off other people's designs or trying to make a design workable within a budget timescale, and loads of unrealistic expectations. Even working with fantastic brands, working with great kind of cooperatives. I did some fair trade work as well, but I was still it wasn't allowing me to kind of answer the questions that some of the technical advisors would come back and say, well, why is this pilling, or why is this design draping in this way? And we were working with some of them, if we were lucky, we're working with 100% wool, but if you don't know what goes into that wool, it's very difficult to kind of make an assessment and kind of make things better. So I was really lucky. I was still in contact with my supervisor back up at Manchester School of Art, and managed to get some Arts and Humanities Research Council funding to do a 4-year practical-based PhD. So that allowed me to kind of go up and around the country, meeting designers, farmers, people working with wool, going to different shows, different festivals, just really getting kind of a broad overview of what was going on in the wool system, with the kind of overarching aim of seeing whether we could create kind of a British breeds database that allowed designers to see all these different characteristics. Because I focused on 72 pure breeds of British sheep. There's many hundred more crossbreeds, but for kind of the PhD, I focused on these 72 to kind of lay the foundations out, with the aim of designing a toolkit that was digital and a physical toolkit, to help designers and makers and anyone working with wool, hopefully see the amazing kind of resource that we have within British wool, especially focusing on knitwear. So I wanted to experiment with new knitwear technologies and push the boundaries of it, kind of push it through conventional use, and investigate the British sheep breed characteristics, so designers could make informed decisions, and then link back this amazing kind of heritage that we have with the wool industry to these breeds that have been bred in specific geographical locations, stratified sheep systems over hundreds of years that have this amazing way of moulding the way that people have lived, the way that cities and towns have developed, and kind of I don't see us needing British wool to kind of compete in global kind of economies of scale and kind of driving down the price. What we want to do is set it apart. So how can I show designers that they have everything at their fingertips, all these amazing local resources? And wool itself overall has all these amazing qualities that from the kind of 1950s and the introduction of synthetics have been trying to replicate, but they've never fully done that. And we've got this here and it's being underutilized. It's hard wearing, it's dirt resistant, it's can control temperature, so it keeps you cool when it's hot, it can keep you warm when it's cold, and it's comfortable, it's hypoallergenic, it's biodegradable, all these amazing kind of tick lists that are all on this big charter for what people want in sustainability, and yet it's kind of still being overlooked. And once you kind of go into it, 100% wool is fantastic. But like I said, unless you know the specific kind of qualities of these different breeds, say you're making a jumper out of Herdwick, it's going to feel very different to a jumper made out of Blueface Leicester or Shetland. So creating kind of a database that allows people to tap into all these different qualities and allows them to kind of get the right yarns for their end product, so they can kind of get the best out of that wool. So I categorised them into what the British Wool Marketing Board already categorised them into. So they use fine, medium, cross, Lustre, Hill, Mountain, and naturally coloured. I didn't look into the crossbreeds because although they kind of have 5 main ones, actually when you start looking into it, there's hundreds of them, as I said before. And this is a really simplified kind of example of the sorting procedure that happens now. So the sheep obviously get sheared each year, which is a welfare issue. They have to get sheared, and it's good for them to be sheared. So it's kind of a local, I'll keep on saying local. It's a renewable resource. It goes to a British Wool Marketing Board local collection site, usually. If they want to send it to the British Wool Marketing Board, it goes to their national facility where it's sorted and graded into about 120 different grades, which is where kind of it piqued my interest, because that's where the homogeny starts to begin. That actually, if you don't have enough of a certain breed, or it's not common or in demand with the people that want to buy it, then it goes into a grade type. So if there's enough, say, Berrichon de Share sheep fleeces, that'll go into grade 617. But if there's not enough of them and it feels like a certain quality, then the graders can put it into a different one. So you're never quite sure of that. And to have all that traceability through these amazing graders that do a fantastic job of grading the fleece into the different qualities, it starts to kind of the provenance of those breeds start to slip away. So I wanted to focus on what was important for designers. So I focused on these 4 kind of key areas that we wanted to know about: the luster, to see how easily it dyed, what the kind of the uptake of the processing, the crimp structure, so the elasticity of the yarns, of the fibres and the creation of yarns, the staple length, so whether it could be woolen spun, worsted spun, whether it would need to be blended with something to create a longer staple. And then the colour for the base colour of how it could dye, or if you wanted to use naturally coloured fibres, what that would be. So I created some kind of infographics to hopefully draw people in to see that there's a lot of kind of complex commercial data available, but to make it accessible to a lot of different people with a lot of different skill bases. So this is kind of the British Wool Marketing Board's data at the time, from 2011-2014 when I started the PhD. And unless you knew what colour YD65 or the Shlum Dry meant, it was very hard to actually figure out, one, what you were looking at, but also what kind of qualities come out of it. So I wanted to kind of normalise a more storytelling, narrative based information package. And so what does the micron count mean? What does the luster mean to a designer? What are they starting to kind of look for, and what they needed to know about? And really start to collect a library of what other people thought as well. So the British Wool Marketing Board could categorise it as one thing, and I could think that actually Herdwick is a little bit, say, prickly, but another person would feel it and say, oh, well, it feels really hardy. To understand those different languages and the way people appreciate things differently. So although it might be slightly prickly to someone, actually because of the depth of colour or the way that they were going to utilise it, that didn't matter. It was a story behind it because they knew all these different elements. It was really interesting as well. So it wasn't just the commercial kind of characteristics that everyone kind of talks about, the micron count being the epitome and wanting this kind of golden fleece micron count handle, when actually in reality that's not what is needed for a knitting yarn at any rate. And then really starting to introduce all these different qualities and combine them together to show this amazing resource that we have. So building in the heritage with the new technology available, showcasing all the different qualities and starting to kind of connect. So I had this fantastic opportunity just to chat with people and network. And like kind of Rachel was saying and Maria before, there's a lot of different pockets of people that not necessarily even on the internet, and you find someone that knows someone that might know someone. And this is how half my fleeces ended up being collected, where that someone knew someone that knew someone that actually they might have one from last year that they chucked in the shed or something. It was amazing to start these conversations and have this kind of build this relationship and build this kind of trust with people with a lot of different amazing skills. And obviously I still needed to kind of format it into an academic proposal, an academic kind of format. So I did quite a very large thesis that if anyone would like to wade through it, it is available on the British Library. But I wanted to kind of merge these together and use this time and use this kind of time that I'll never have again to sit at a computer and really kind of get my thoughts down, as well as all these amazing kind of facts and people that I've been able to kind of read about. So I kind of categorize them into the importance of industry and marketing, the technological aspects, and the kind of technology that is used within wool processing and knitwear design, and the sustainability and the impacts of wool, and then the kind of craft and the handmade and all the heritage that goes along with that. So those are kind of all the different areas that are culminated together within the research. And as I said before, bringing that together and starting to connect people, because everyone gets better. And my work was so much better by kind of connecting a designer that I thought would be really interested in talking to this farmer, and the farmer that was really interested in talking to the dyer, and all these kind of little bits all connecting together that kind of bridged the gaps and started to show people the possibilities that the farmers absolutely love their sheep. They're not in it for the money. Maria and Andrea, I'm sure you can attest to that. But what they do have is this amazing kind of skill base, and they shouldn't have to kind of take time away from their main job in order to kind of get their money's worth for the wool. There should always already be this inbuilt quality for that. So, and at the kind of other end of the scale, as knitters, you know kind of how valuable and how kind of monetary wise how much you pay for yarns. Sometimes when farmers are talking about, oh, I'm getting 10, 20p a kilo, but then you find seeing wool in the shops that's £20 for 100 grams, there's that kind of disconnect if you don't know all those different processes and the amount of money that goes into producing these yarns of all these different kind of tasks. That kind of disengagement, which I think we all have, even kind of like I do, and I've been submerged in it, and I've loved kind of making and creating since as long as I can remember. But I still kind of fall into the trap of, oh, I need to go and get my little girl another pair of leggings. Well, I don't have time to go and make them. I can't go and buy the fabric, so I've got to pop to, I don't know, Asda on my way home, and you pay £3. You know, in the back of your head, it's I feel really, really guilty, because you know that someone's missing out on that in that kind of £3. You can't make it for £3, but that's the society we're living in. So kind of it's education, and I'm obviously not perfect, but I wanted to kind of raise that awareness that there is that kind of disengagement, and it's showing the process. And I think through showing that journey, that's where the value is added. So anyway, back to PhD wise. So I wanted to create this toolkit that was kind of hopefully engaging and aesthetically pleasing, that people wanted to kind of look into, but that also kind of showed things that you don't get that much anymore. So I kind of was looking at books from 1940, 1950 that had these amazing SEM images within it, but I couldn't find any up-to-date ones. You might get one that put a wool fibre next to a cotton fibre, but there wasn't any kind of anything that put the different breeds together. So looking at different scale structures under a microscope allowed you to kind of see why they are actually different from a microscopic level. So those scales kind of affect the way things felt, affect the way that the yarns take dye, and there's all these different kind of elements that all contain, and also they just look really nice, and you can see, you start to see the difference in these individual fibres once they're laid up against each other. So I also worked with digital software, with Shima digital software, to create digital yarns, to create a yarn library, to kind of really focus on wool as a precious resource. There's a lot of kind of waste in the sampling stages. So if we can eradicate some of that by utilising this digital element, that you could get a fairly rough idea of what your wools may look like in an end design through a computer, instead of having to waste X amount of kilos testing it that doesn't work. You could kind of work with factories across the UK without having to kind of go up and down and send things back and forth. But it also starts to kind of show you all the different qualities of the wool. So kind of, you've got Herdwick next to Hebridean, next to Greyface Dartmoor. That really starts to highlight the different, the way that even the woolen and the worsted spinning process affects the yarns, but also the staple length of the yarns, all the little kempy bits that are sticking out. You can see all those different elements and how they start to change the qualities of the end yarn. And so this was just a little bit more of the digital manipulation that is available. And so a few of the outcomes were that I drew a few sheep in my spare time, and then realised that actually I should probably do a few more and a few more until they were all done. At first I was like, well, maybe they're all going to look quite similar, but actually all the kind of the visual areas of the sheep, they all do look different. They've all got their own personalities. You can see kind of some of the bullishness of like the Beltex and the Texels compared to kind of the quite teddy bearishness of the Rylands. And they all have these different kind of elements that, maybe I'm just a massive sheep geek, but I love to see all the different little bits going on. So I collected 72 British pure breed yarn samples, right from kind of the fleece stages through to knitting up little swatches, just to see how they'd work, and put them side by side so you could start to flick through them and start to compare and contrast them. Collated all this kind of information in the journeys of going to see the scourers, going to see the spinners, and collated that all into sketchbooks. I kept kind of monthly diaries, and then started to work on how I could display these in a way that people would want to engage with them and want to touch and feel and start to see the differences of the yarns. I kind of set myself a challenge of making sure that all the data looked good, but was also easily accessible. And so kind of set myself a challenge of getting everything that I wanted, like the surface of it, on an A4 sheet of paper for each breed. So these are them kind of filled in. So you've got the kind of fleece through to the yarn, through to a knit sample. Still got the microscopic qualities, but a little bit of the background sits right next to the more commercial data of the staple length, the fleece weight, the approximate fleece weight, the micron count, and things like that. Breed books that kind of go into a little bit more detail if you did want to find out more. And this was kind of the end exhibition that followed my Viva, which was terrifying, but went well in the end. And also kind of the digital elements were that I created a British Breeds virtual yarn library with Shima, and then a website that you can access now, www.thewoollist.co.uk, which you can start to kind of sort through the breeds. So if you just kind of wanted to see what was there, you can look through all of them, but you can start to kind of sort them from 72. You can say, right, actually I'm interested in a really soft handle, which would take it down to 7 of them. You're actually interested in a white or cream one because you want to dye it, that takes it down to 4. You want to have it woolen spun, so actually you need to know the staple length of that, and you can start to kind of pick out all those different elements to find the perfect breed for your end product. So now I've kind of, that was where I was, well, I don't know whether I'd actually had my Viva when we had the first night at the museum. I think I blanked it out. But from there, I've kind of travelled around to loads of different wool shows, from Unravel to smaller local ones like the Wool Experience. That's my lovely husband that gets dragged around. Oh, so I got married in that time as well. He gets dragged around to the fairs now. I worked with London City Farms across some of their summer events to showcase the fleece qualities next to the breeds being shown by the Young Farmers Association. Got a chance to go up to Edinburgh and did a wool research station there at their festival in 2019. Ran a Guess You just to get people to feel and touch the qualities, give them a few clues. And I think out of about, I think I got 180 entries, only 4 people got the right answers. And I was very strict with them. I didn't give them any extra clues, but it was really interesting to see all the different people's answers of those ones. I've been holding talks and running workshops, talking through my journey, but also allowing people to kind of knit and sample with some of the yarns, and create their own little data sheets to take home and hopefully want to explore more. Working with knitwear designers to just test different breed characteristics and test different stitches. These are some of the swatch samples that I sent to designers, so crochet designers. I've been working with embroiderers to test out the yarn qualities on those, and then it was so successful that I've actually turned them into kits, which you can get from, shameless plug here, sorry, which you can get over on my Etsy site. So I've been selling bits of the kind of posters and tea towels and the kits on Etsy to support my research and support myself. A few interviews in magazines and things like that, which is always nice to do. And I also had a baby. This is actually using some of Rachel's Ram Jam. So she is 18 months old, so she's a proper lockdown baby. If you hear any squealing, that's her in the background. But now we're on to the kind of exciting bit of the flock and working with Maria. So I'll kind of blabber for 1 minute more, and then I'm going to get Maria to talk a little bit more about the farming side of things, if that's all right, Kate.
Absolutely, it's just fascinating.
Tell me to shut up otherwise.
I think, you know, the amount of work that's gone into everything that you've done, but actually it's really accessible for someone like me, or for everybody, but for someone like me who knows a little bit and not a lot. And when I'm looking at what yarn I want spun, you've done it in a way that makes it easy to do, and you know, and hopefully that will encourage more people to you know.
I think the more kind of I've gone out, and obviously lockdown there's been a lot more kind of Zoom talks and a lot more digital chatting, but from kind of the events that I was able to do before that and talking to people at the farmers' yarns and things, it's really nice to see people really want to engage with that. So I kind of more and more there's been this kind of tactile journey of learning what people want to play with, and I think just wool as a medium is amazing for drawing people in. Even just these kind of images on the screen, you can see the difference between the two breeds, that you do just want to put your fingers through it and squidge it, don't you?
yeah, no, it's fantastic, really, really good, and yeah, just well done. And I'm really excited to hear about the flock, so I'll mute myself again.
No worries. So I've been working with Maria and Gloria. So Maria on kind of the farming and breed knowledge side of things has been amazing. Me kind of bringing my little bit of research of how we could blend certain breeds to get the characteristics that we need, the kind of the industry knowledge of understanding the processing stages. So this is us three together. Oh, and Gloria, obviously, do not forget Gloria, who works for kind of a luxury fashion company down in London. So she knows that side of the industry, but is also really passionate about pushing natural fibres and understanding the qualities that can be transferred between kind of wool and other natural fibres as well, which is really exciting. So we're wanting to kind of work with traceable farm to yarn principles, so understanding and building relationships with farmers to kind of show them that we love the wool and we love the fleece that they work with, and it is worth a lot, that kind of quality and the integrity of it. We want to show them that we value that, so we want to be kind of British wool advocates and empower kind of the farmers, and through kind of every stage to show that traceability and kind of be authentic. Like, we're very open with the fact that we're working with British mills as well as Italian mills, and to develop some of the yarns, because we've created these fantastic relationships with producers and manufacturers that really know what they're doing, but also want to push the boundaries as well and open up new avenues. That we've been working with an Italian mill that has never worked with British wool before, but has seen kind of Maria's stuff that she sent over and is now kind of really, really excited about the possibilities of showcasing this to European brands that haven't had the opportunity to work with British wool in a long time. So really opening up those other avenues and not kind of relying on, I think there's sometimes this little bubble that you think that farmers sell it to the British Wool Marketing Board and then it stays within the UK, which it very much doesn't. There's a massive percentage now, over 60% of it gets sent over to China, Pakistan and India to be processed. So it's not staying within our borders, and like kind of Maria said before, all these people and all these communities that were built on the wool industry, then we're at the kind of precipice of losing that. So this is some of the yarn sampling we're working with. I think we're working with how many? 4 different types of yarn, 4 different breeds at the moment, and blending them together to kind of really start to experiment with the different qualities of the yarns that we can get made, and in commercial quantities as well. So starting to bridge that gap between crafters and makers have really got this kind of, you've already got that tacit knowledge because you're working with your hands, but also wouldn't it be amazing to kind of go into I'm not saying kind of high street, but go into Hobbs or Jigsaw or Toast and be able to buy 100% wool jumper, instead of kind of looking and being like, oh well, it's got 10% wool in, so that's all right. It would be fantastic to kind of like push the boundaries of that and be able to kind of show that there is the quantity and the quality here for 100% traceable pure British wool and high fashion garments. And how amazing would fashion be if you actually feel empowered and good about all the purchases you make, instead of feeling a little bit guilty sometimes. So these are some of the yarns that we've been experimenting with, and Maria will tell you more about the blending. And these are some of the, we've been working with designers to create some yarns for their own collections, making sure that they kind of feel valued in that chain as well, and showing them kind of all the different processes and how that can start to not be a marketing campaign as such, but kind of add to their story and kind of empower them in that journey of using local materials as well. So I don't know, Maria, if you want to chat a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. I haven't got any more slides to show, but yeah, I think with the reason the flock is quite exciting is because there's definitely this gap between like this wool in particular. This has gone to Kate from Obus Knitwear, and she struggled to find British wool with provenance. So there's definitely a gap in that sort of manufacturing environment for traceable 100% British wool. So it's exciting to get in there. You know, wool is, somebody just mentioned, isn't all wool supposed to go to the British Wool Board? It is, and lots of people burn it, and by law they're not supposed to, but in a way the Wool Board can't really complain because they're paying farmers so little. It's actually costing them to give the British Wool Board their wool, which basically seems to just pay the Wool Board salaries and not do an awful lot else. It doesn't come back to the farmers at all. So farmers are obviously very unhappy, so it's been and I get asked all the time to take wool from people, and I just don't have the finances to be able to take it and the opportunity to sell it on yet. But I'm really hoping that our business will grow, and I hope that we can do something with the Wool Board. I mean, they're such a big organisation, and they've kind of gone down this one track of creating you know, almost like a very simple sales funnel where they sell massive quantities, which very few UK producers can buy into. I think there's so few buyers that buy from them, probably like 5 or 10. I really don't know, I'm making it up, but not very many that that buy from them, and they just buy huge bulk. And so small producers just don't get a look in with the Wool Board. So they're kind of cutting off all these manufacturers that want to work with British wool that just have no access to it really, unless they just go direct to a farmer. But for some brands, they just don't really have that. So I really hope that we can, you know, can kind of fill that gap, and then hopefully other people will start filling it too, and maybe the wool board can they are starting to sell a bit more wool with provenance, but so far it seems to be sort of mattresses and things like that. So it'd be great if they were able to do more for some of these smaller fashion brands as well. But if we can show that it works and that there's definitely a market for it, they might be more keen. Yeah.
Thank you. It's brilliant. I'm really excited. It's been really nice to hear more about it, and I'll be keenly watching to see, you know, the next developments. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks so much, Zoe. I think, and I've seen there's lots of questions that have come in, so that's great, and we will pick some out shortly. But I wanted to introduce next Andrea Meanwell, who Maria introduced me to when I was organising the last event as a perfect candidate to come along and talk to us about her farming journey. And I was just transfixed with the readings and the poetry and the words. So Andrea, I'm hoping you might indulge us again with some of that. And I've been really loving watching you on Countryfile this year and farming with your son. So yes, please tell us a bit more.
Thanks, Kate. I'm just sharing the screen. Can you all see that now?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Kate. Lovely to see familiar faces as well from last time. And great to listen to Maria and Rachel and Zoe. Always really inspiring to hear them speak. So thank you. My story isn't so much about wool. It's more about just telling the story of hill farming and telling people what goes on hill farms. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my own farm, which is Low Boroughbridge Farm. The farm itself, the diversification businesses that we have, and why we have to do that other work, because it isn't financially viable to just farm a small hill farm now. A little bit about my writing and about how I'm trying to tell the story of hill farming and why I'm trying to do that. So I used to have a small holding. I literally started off with 2.5 acres and 2 sheep in the Rusden Valley, which is quite near where Maria is now. But I'd helped my uncle on his hill farm since I was able to walk, really. And I've always had a lifelong fascination with dogs and sheep. You know, they're really the two things that interest me. I did have a teaching career because my parents thought it was a really good idea for me to have another career with how things were in hill farming at the time when I was leaving school in the 1980s. And it was actually whilst I was doing some preparation for headship when I had to go on some professional development courses. And the person who was doing my development said to me, now tell me from your heart, what actually would you like to achieve at the end of your career? He said, don't think about it, just tell me what's in your heart. And I said, a really good flock of sheep. And he said, I think you're in the wrong job, love. So at that point, then I started to build up my own farm. And in 2018, we bought Low Boroughbridge Farm, which is near T-Bay. It's 170 acres. And I've got a partnership arrangement with my son. We're 50-50 owners in the business together. We work together, and he makes some decisions and I make some decisions. And I think it's really important that even at 22, he makes some of the decisions, because it would be very easy to become disenchanted if you were working really hard, not making a lot of money, and you didn't have a lot of decision making. So we're an upland beef and sheep farm. We have rough fell sheep and Welsh hill speckled face sheep. The rough fell is the local breed of our area, And the Welsh Hills speckled-faced sheep, it's a bit of a long rambling story, but I got into working with them because they asked for some help with their website and their social media. And they gave me some sheep in return because I said I wouldn't take any payment. So they brought me some sheep. And they said, if we give you really good quality sheep, will you show them and promote them throughout the local area? And I said, yes, you know, why did you want me to do that? It's not a Welsh Hill speckled-faced. And they explained that they were trying to get some flocks outside of their traditional hefts in Snowdonia, just in case there was another disease outbreak, because DEFRA had identified that that was the sheep most likely to be lost in the UK if there was another disease outbreak, because it's very concentrated within a very small geographical area, even more so than our herdwicks here. So from that point on, I could see it was really important to them to preserve their breed. So here now we have about 2/3 rough fell and about 1/3 Welsh Hill. And we try to keep a really, really good quality flock just to help them with their genetic diversity. I've also got some rare breed Westland sheep that I love, and I sell those to smallholders, stately homes, those sort of buyers. We do a lot of environmental work on the farm. I would say that the environmental work and the productive farming is about 50-50 priority on the farm. We really try and make the most of our productive areas, but we try and provide really good habitats as well. And that was part of the appeal of buying this farm, really, in that we have a lot of ancient woodland, we have red squirrels, we have otters, we have wading birds. It had been neglected really for a long time by the previous owner, who was quite poorly, but that neglect is good because that meant that there was a lot of trees everywhere, and it was the ideal place for us, really. And it also coincidentally has a Roman fort. So there's a lot going on the farm. This little pie chart here that I've put at the bottom is just to show you that we have like a whole variety of income streams. We have the basic payment scheme, which is a government subsidy. Then we have our environmental payments for providing wildlife habitats. We have access payments, that's for things like people who need to access the railway, or sometimes we hold sporting events here. We don't run them, but other people come and use the land. And when I first moved here, I was doing a bit of off-farm work. I was selling dogs, selling sheep, doing various events. And so doing all of that in 2019, we made a loss of about £8,000. So that's with government support as well. And we're very aware that we're about to lose a lot of our government support. So we needed to do more, really. We needed to step up and diversify our business. So we started doing a pop-up campsite. We've opened a holiday cottage. I knit hats and sell them on Etsy. And I do a lot of writing. I've written 5 books in 5 years, and I'll talk about that more. I write 2 magazine columns. But we still weren't making enough of a profit, really. So 2 years ago, we took the decision, my son and I, that he most of the day-to-day actual physical work here on the farm, and would give up his other off-farm job, although he has subsequently gone back and done more work. But I would take off-farm work, which was becoming the farming officer for the Lake District National Park Authority, which is a fantastic job because it allows me to work with people like Maria and have wonderful things like the Ladies with Livestock group on a Friday, and really work to help farmers in the Lake District National Park Authority. And thankfully in 2020 we have made a small profit, enough for me to pay my son a small amount for working here for the year. So it's hard work, but it is working. So I'm on a bit of a mission, really, to tell the story of hill farming. Why is that? Well, I guess it's because of my family history. You know, if you look back through my family tree, my family have farmed in this area around the Westmoreland Dales and around Kirkby Stephen for at least 500 years. You know, I can trace back my direct descendants. I grew up helping my uncle, but when I was younger, particularly, I felt that farming didn't really have a voice. I think things are better now. You know, we do have people like James Rebanks. We have fantastic advocates for our woolen products like Maria. We do have more people shouting out about hill farming and about the value of it. But I definitely felt about 5 years ago, that somebody needed to challenge things that were being said. And the tipping point for me, the thing that absolutely threw me over the edge, was George Monbiot writing in The Guardian about the Lake District being sheep-wrecked. When I read that, I was actually on holiday, and I'd gone on holiday to Robin Hood's Bay. My son had to come back because our farm sitter had had some sort of a heart attack. And I was thinking, how difficult is it actually to have a 5-day holiday? It was just impossible. And then I read that sheep-wrecked article. And so straight away, I wrote back to The Guardian and said, hey, hang on, I want a response here. I want an article about hill farming in The Guardian. And surprisingly, they said, can we have 600 words by 5 p.m? So quickly on my phone, when I was on holiday, I just typed something straight from the heart, and that became the most commented article in The Guardian that week. Even though there was a budget and there was a lot of discussion about things going on in the Treasury, the most commented on thing that week in The Guardian website was actually my opinion that the Lake District was not sheep-wrecked. It was probably about 50-50%, to be honest. 50% of people were saying it was, and 50% of people saying it wasn't. But at least it demonstrated that people were ready and up for the debate. So following on from that, I quite quickly, really, in rapid succession, wrote 5 books over 5 years about our farm, and became a Cumbria magazine columnist as well, which is a thing which is really close to my heart, because my grandparents absolutely loved the Cumbria. And when my granddad was poorly and in hospital, he used to read the farming column to me down the phone, because he'd say, oh, have you heard this? And tell me what was going on in the farming column. So to be writing that myself now is absolutely fantastic for me. So what's happened recently? Well, in 2021, I've got 2 books coming out. The first one is an amalgamation of 3 years of columns in the Cumbria magazine. And I'd said to the publisher that I wasn't going to write another book about the farm this year. The reason for that was this television thing was bubbling away, and I felt that I had enough on, really. But also, I kind of felt that it was my son's time on the farm now, and really it was up to him to share what was going on if he wanted to. We had the decision that he would be making most of the day-to-day decisions on the farm. So I kind of felt that it was time to stop writing about the farm, really. So I've got the book coming out, which is the amalgamation of the columns, and then I've got another book coming out, which, as I said to you, I did used to be a primary school teacher, and I really used to struggle to inspire the boys in my class, which was year 2, 3 and 4, to read anything. And when we looked on the shelves, there wasn't very much that interested them, really. So I'm writing a series of books now for what is termed reluctant readers, for boys particularly, but also for girls aged sort of 6 to 9 who have disengaged with reading for whatever reason. I'm trying to write about things that interest them. So the first book is called Lambing at Hill Farm, and that's coming out later this year. And it's about 3 children who live on a farm. It's basically like When the Beast from the East Came. There's a big farming adventure, and it's the children, but it's all very simple and straightforward, so that hopefully it's accessible for those who wouldn't normally read a book like that. I've become a country diary columnist now in The Guardian, which means that I get a regular slot for hill farming. The next one is on next Tuesday, and then there's another one in August, which is really, that's really close to my heart, because at school I used to go and sit in the library as an excuse not to be wandering around outside with me and my friend. And they took 2 newspapers. They took The Guardian and The Times, and she used to read The Times every day, and I used to read The Guardian, and the only thing that was interesting really was the diary column. So I'd sit there and read that over and over. So to be writing it now is a real joy for me. And I've also done the Countryfile this year. Countryfile approached us and asked us if we'd be interested in making 4 full episodes about daily life on our farm. And of course, I was really interested, because I've been thinking that the writing is all very well, but you're only appealing to a certain kind of audience, particularly I think those who are already interested in hill farming. Most of my books, to be honest, go to America, and I was thinking that I need to do something to engage other people with knowledge about hill farming. And I was thinking perhaps some YouTube videos, because I know not everybody likes to read, doing video instead. And then Countryfile approached us and asked about doing 4 episodes, and I thought, well, that would be ideal because it has something like 6.5 million viewers, so you know that's a great audience to tell the story of hill farming. So the first episode was supposed to be Adam Henson here, but he couldn't come because of the coronavirus restrictions. So instead, we made this 10-minute postcard from our farm, and those 2 pictures are from that there. So it was basically us talking to the camera without a presenter, making that little almost like a mini film about the farm. I'll put the link in later if I remember, so that you can watch it if you want to. So that was quite daunting, really, because they kept saying to me at the BBC, don't worry, the presenter will lead everything. You know, they'll ask you all of the questions, you just have to answer honestly. Well, of course, the presenter, there was us and a cameraman and a sound man. But we managed to do it, and it seemed to go down really well. I had lots of letters in the post afterwards, which was amazing. And we've now done 1 full episode, and we've got 3 more coming up. The next one they're filming in September, and they want to film some people coming on a farm walk. So I've been talking to Kate about the possibility of some sort of collaboration with that. And it's actually really great for me because the BBC allow us to sort of lead the stories. So for each season of the year, they want stories from us, and then they want stories from around the Lake District. So you may have seen last time we did one about natural flood management and one about fell ponies. So I feel like I'm sort of got a lot of steer over what's being shown, which is really good. Obviously, I'm not involved in the editing process, but it's a way of getting the stories about the Lake District that I think are really important out to a really mainstream audience rather than just a niche audience. But crikey, it's exhausting. You know, you wouldn't believe the hours that go into filming that episode. That one episode was 3 days from 6:15 to 10:15, absolute non-stop. And at the end of that, I would have said absolutely anything just to get rid of them and for them to say cut. And everything has to be filmed 3 times, once in long shot, once in close up, and once in a drone from above. So you've really got to remember what you say and how you kneel down and all of that kind of thing. Otherwise, you have to do it again. So what's going on in the future? Well, obviously, we're thinking about succession here, and I have 3 sons. So how do you manage that? That's going to be a big issue in the future for me. I've got 2 more children's books to write. And it was interesting to hear about Zoe's PhD. I'm also probably going to do a PhD myself, part-time over 6 years. This is because I'm a shepherding advisor to the World Heritage Site Technical Advisory Group, and a lot of the opinions that I'm giving them are almost like anecdotal from farmers, and we need more than that. We need actual peer-reviewed evidence to say why hill farming is important and why the culture is important. And time and again, it's coming up that we don't have this evidence. So the University of Cumbria have suggested that I provide the evidence that is required as part of a PhD. So that's going to be an exciting project. I'd like to retire from work at 60, so I've got 10 years to get on with this and make sure that I manage to get all of this work done. I've got an 8-year plan to improve my sheep. We've got various challenges on farm, particularly to do with water supply because it's getting so dry and climate change, but I won't go into that now because I just wanted to have time at the end to read a little bit from my latest book, which is called Hefted to the Howgills, and it's about a year on a Yorkshire Dales farm. And this was written about the year of well, it was sort of the year before the lockdown, and then there's a little sort of tag on at the end about the lockdown. So this is a poem about why culture in the Lake District is important, but it's actually it's from when I'm on holiday up in the Alps. So it's called Holiday. It is absolutely perfect. I am standing knee-deep in flowers, sweet williams and lilies all growing wild. The alpine huts, the flower meadows, the pollinators, wooded valleys, perfection. Look at this, you say. Is there not an argument for saying that sheep have wrecked the Lake District? But as we understand more over the next few days, we realise that these valleys here are essentially dead. They're all illustrations of conservation, but not of farming, because nobody farms here now. All the families have left. They work in the towns and they come back at the weekends to enjoy the view, but they do not farm. And while the valleys are alive with nature, in human terms, this valley is dead. We must not allow our Cumbrian valleys to die a death. We must farm on quietly through political noise. And when there's quiet and when the noise of dissent has abated, maybe then they will appreciate the farmers who keep on keeping on through Brexit, through climate emergency, through disease outbreak and throughout life. And I wrote that before coronavirus, actually. I think it's quite funny now looking back that I put through disease outbreak. I was actually meaning foot and mouth, but it's even more relevant now, I think. Right, the price of wool, this is appropriate for tonight. The price of wool has fallen through the floor, so don't bother selling it, just keep it for another year. Wrap it well and store it somewhere dry, and maybe next year it'll be better. If we buy it this year, the quote's negative, meaning you pay us to take it away. Because the price of wool has just dropped, you see, and there's nothing we can do. There's no point selling it now. And yet this world and the next generation are all about sustainability, low carbon lifestyle, cutting back on waste, recycling more. But wool is the ultimate sustainable product. It grows, it captures carbon, it has to be harvested. It's biodegradable, washable, waterproof, windproof, carbon positive, and most of all, it's cheap. But there's no market here for this wool. So it sits there in the barn, waiting for somebody to wake up to wool. I think it's waiting for Maria, actually. It's still there. Right, this is called tree guards, and this is about a phenomenon called rewilding, which you may have heard about. Roman soldiers used to line this gorge, seeing off invaders from the north. Border raiders came, and then gunpowder, cannonballs found in molehills still today. But now an army of tree guards and fence posts slowly march across the fell. They're planted with military precision, guarding and claiming the landscape as their own. The previous farmer here always sat in the same chair, watching his hefted flock from the kitchen table. But now we watch an army of plastic tree guards that are commandeering the landscape. Scrub. They're not trees, but scrub. These bushes will increase wildlife and make the landscape more resilient to flooding, but it just doesn't feel right to me, because there was no regard for the hefted flock, and their loss is grieved by the older farmers in the valley. They tell me about how they used to get to the heft under the railway bridge, wistfully pointing up to the fell. And I feel as if something's really amiss here. There was no consideration for our cultural heritage. There's just matted grass and the memory of a sheep flock. We have no memory of that sheep flock, but we've still got the same kitchen chair, and it looks out at the same fell view. And it's not quite right to me, because there's too much change and there's too little compromise. And the problem is not the addition of trees, it's the total removal of sheep and our culture. The fell feels bereaved, it's lacking in something. And meanwhile, the tree guards march on, occupying more and more of my view. I feel I need to apologise for this opinion. I do genuinely want to see more trees, just not to the exclusion of what really matters here. The old boys that used to live here, they'd be horrified to see this. And I daren't quite say to my neighbour that I'm quite horrified myself. Time will tell, the scrub will grow, and the hefted sheep will become just a memory of a memory. Right, I've got two more. This one is called Lockdown. For years, people on social media have been criticising me about farmers being subsidised, saying I shouldn't need to take government money to run my business. But now in lockdown, those voices are silent, and I wonder how many have been so critical are now furloughed and taking government money themselves. I hear no dissenting voices when the government says that farmers are key workers, food chain supplies are newsworthy, and people seem to suddenly grasp the fact that farmers produce food. Food's important. Supplies in supermarkets run low, and I text home really excitedly when I see flour on the shelves. This is the new normal. Farmers are culturally relevant. The discussion is now how to get food that we produce to the consumers who are safely isolated in their homes. One of us here is extremely vulnerable, shielded, and a full food parcel arrives full of essentials. Could we ever have imagined that this might happen in 2020? And there's talk of rationing at the end of all this. And I hope we remember that upland farmers can produce food as well as ecosystem services. Right, and this is the last one, it's called Gathered. I'm worried as I watch the dates tick by on the calendar of all the shows and shepherd's meets I should have been at, that I've witnessed the very end of something. The end of something very special. What if the shows cannot ever function as they did? And what if 2019 was the last shepherd's meet? I'll let others worry about crashing economies and failing companies, because my concern is, what if we never meet to show our sheep again? I think back to stuffing rosettes into my jean pockets and smiling into the winter sun with my arms aching, holding the sheep in the sticky mud. And somehow, these simple shepherd's meets are what really matters here. They heft us to each other like a flock of old fell yows being gathered in. We're gathered in from our farms, and we're gathered together to celebrate sheep. We're held together by generations of shepherding, and we're tied together by working hands with baler twine, and we're sharing our life amongst the fells, amongst the shepherds, and amongst the sheep. Thanks very much, everyone, for listening.
Andrea, that was amazing. Thank you so much. Really beautiful words. I love the way you can just, I don't know, farming is obviously really hard work, and you make it sound hard work but beautiful at the same time. It's a huge talent, and I can't wait to get your new book. Is that out now, Andrea, did you say?
Yeah, it's out now, yeah. Hefted to the Howgills, it's called.
Great. And is that on, can you put the link on the chat?
Yeah, I can do, yeah.
There. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Brilliant. I hope, thanks so much to the panel, and thank you all for coming. There's been lots of questions in the chat. I had some questions, but I think there's plenty in the chat to get going with. And I think Becky is going to, if you don't mind, Becky, pick some out, and I'll mute. And if people would like to read them out, if you don't, that's fine. But if you want to read them out, that might be quite nice, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there were so many good questions, and some of them I think have been sort of like covered a little bit in the discussion, and also some people helping to answer in the chat, which is brilliant, but I still think they're all really relevant. So Pam, I don't know if you're still here, Pam Roebuck, but you asked a question about how come wool is worth so little. Are you still here, Pam? Do you want to ask your question, unmute and ask your question?
Yes, I am still here. Yeah, I must admit, and we've heard a lot tonight about the price of wool and why actually it seems to be worthless in some cases, but I must admit I still don't really understand why it's changed so much, because there's so many people now who are crafting all over the world. So I'm still puzzled as to why it comes to the point where fleeces are burnt. So
yeah, that was one of my first questions, really, that was about what happens when it gets to the wool board, that who decides the price, Are they just selling it really cheaply? You know, what happens? I don't know if Maria, you've got a better idea. How?
Well, it's just that they sell, I can't remember that. Zoe, do you know the minimum quantity? It's something massive. It's something like 8 tons that you can buy at a time.
Yeah, so they get put into 8-ton cubes to sell.
And they sell it, is it monthly sales or?
It's now, yeah, so in the last couple of years, they have tried to start opening it up a little bit. So they do monthly auctions. Yeah. But as you can kind of guess, 8 tons is a hell of a lot of raw wool to start with. So they still kind of only have key brokers, because you've got to add in the costs of storing it, transporting it, never mind the kind of scouring, processing, dyeing, finishing before it gets to kind of a nice skeined yarn to use.
I didn't realize that.
When they're selling in that big quantity and there's not so many buyers that can buy in that scale, it's kind of a buyer's market, you know, so they can just bid low. Nobody else needs that much, because, you know, there's not, although the crafters and stuff, yeah, there's a demand, but the demand, the wool generally is sort of carpets and things like that. But because of lockdown, obviously hotels aren't really changing their carpets and things, so that's why they've not been selling so much, because that was mainly where the wool was going. But really that's sort of cheapening it, because it is good enough to wear on your back and people aren't wearing, there's a disconnect between farming and clothing.
I think the British Wool Market Board has an amazing opportunity to be fantastic, because the whole reason why it came about was because of the way that farming is in the UK, that it's compared to kind of the US or Australia, it's quite small quantities of fleece. So by being able to kind of combine them together, they could access kind of global economies of scale. So they could go against other, not go against, but they could promote it to other countries in kind of vast quantities. But then that's very reliant on the kind of exporting and importing industry. So you're kind of reliant on overseas markets then to
and I think the people
down.
I think the people in the wool board as well, I think they're the sort of business people that always put me off business, you know, sort of, I mean, I don't know them, so I'm just maybe this isn't correct, but it seems like that way of like bulk buying and everything's about being big, rather than just you know, kind of, and streamlining, and you know, all that way of thinking was very much about being modern and progressive. But actually, and farming got like that as well, where everyone's just keeping one breed of sheep, selling it in a livestock auction, and all about moving units. And actually that's not very sustainable, and a more sustainable approach is by diversifying. So if the wool board sold some vast quantities of maybe lower quality wool for carpet, and they really looked after some of the higher quality wool, kept the provenance, they could supply to smaller UK markets and keep the wool in the UK instead of it so much leaving and going to China and other countries. So it would really benefit the British economy if they took but it's because it's a bit like they're like a massive cruise ship, so trying to change direction takes a long time, you know, to shift it, whereas for say me and Zoe working together, we're like in a little dinghy, so we can just easily change direction or suddenly whiz over this way. It's much easier for us. But if they are open, then of course we would love to have dialogue with them, because they have resources that we don't have, they have knowledge that we don't have, and so ideally it wouldn't be us and them, or us being a bit hidden. So it'd be great to kind of somehow work with them so that they could improve their system of selling as well, that improves overall for farmers.
I think just like a statistic as well that I read recently from the Clean Clothes campaign was that wool is 1% of the textile 1% of global fibre production now in the world. So that's 99% other fibres that we are, like, I'm not wearing any wool today, and I'm not saying go out in the sweltering heat in wool, but it does just go to show you kind of how little crafters and makers and designers using wool, kind of pushing it is amazing. But yeah, in the world that we live in, it's still a very, very tiny percentage, and within that 1%, British wool is only 2% of that 1%. So you can really start to see, even though we're still dealing with thousands of tons, in the kind of global scheme of things, it's a drop in the ocean, really.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you.
Following from that, we've got a really nice question again. Katie Lawrence, I don't know if you're still with us. I mean, you sort of like had a two-part question on, I think the first part of your question about farmers burning wool and can they opt out, I think we've probably covered that, but you had a second part to your question about the crook symbol for British wool. And are you still here, Katie? Do you want to ask the question?
Yeah, no, somebody pointed it out to me a little while ago that that wool with the British wool symbol, the crook symbol, doesn't necessarily include sort of 100% British wool, and I was just wondering why that was, because it, you know, seems like they have large quantities of British wool. Why would they be using sort of, and what countries would the other wool be from, if anybody knew?
It's funny, I don't think I've got the exact answer, but I certainly know they did New Lanark, and they have the crook as their British wool. But I think when I first started, I really looked into it and asked, you know, producers where their wool was from, and was it 100% this, and they actually said no, it didn't have to be 100% to get the crook, and they said it was because of the machinery that they used. That if they used 100% British wool, it wouldn't go through the machines properly, and they said it was about 80%, I think, from memory. I don't know anymore why, you know, I don't know why it wouldn't go through the machines, and why. I mean, it was just a generic British wool, so they weren't working with breed specific wools. I don't know, do you know, Zoe? Or
I think the wool board have now brought out a platinum standard, which is I think it's not, well, it's you can have 0.5% of other things, which I think kind of that allows for any tiny little bits of contamination within that, but then that is set up mainly for the carpet industry as a standard as well. But I don't think what doesn't help is that you could have something labelled as, I'm not talking about the British wool standard, but you could call something 100% British wool, but then if it's not spun in the UK, or if it's not, it's only had one tiny little element of that also kind of confuses consumers, and that shouldn't be allowed. It's not fair to have that kind of greenwashing on there and not be completely open. So I think you're right, it's not fair for the British crook to kind of make people think that they're buying into and doing this good thing of buying British wool, when actually a lot of the other processes are not regulated either, and it shouldn't be hard work for consumers to purchase things in good faith and then it turns out to be the wrong thing.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself then. So I think, yeah, that's really interesting. And I guess the final question probably would be more for Andrea and for Maria as well, actually. So this was quite an early one. So Marilyn, again, Marilyn Kendall, I don't know if you're still with us, but you spoke about, obviously, and there was some discussion in the chat about, you know, your question, Marilyn, wasn't it? It was about people being veggie and vegan now, and about environmental standards. Are you still with us, Marilyn? Wow.
Yes, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, yes.
Yeah, I mean, people have touched on some of that, and I mean, it's been a really interesting evening, and I think, you know, especially when Andrea was talking about how people don't understand the culture of hill farming, and how she's, you know, supportive of rewilding, but felt like it was done without any consultation. And I just feel like that's kind of a general problem, perhaps, that it's become quite divisive, and instead of reaching out and talking and communicating and trying to understand each other, it's become a kind of two tribes thing, which is a shame, because a lot of what's been said this evening clearly shows there's a lot of common ground that we could work on. And Maria, you know, you said that as well, about working locally and building up dialogue and trying to understand people's different backgrounds and how British wool could fit into a whole variety of ways.
Thanks, Marilyn. And yeah, I mean, if I could piggyback onto that as well, because that was going to be my question of the evening, was about, yeah, Andrea, I was really struck by what you said about how, you know, it often feels like you get this choice between like farming and nature, but I've seen, you know, so much, you know, really amazing practice by farmers like yourselves and like Maria, who, you know, and people speaking about things like agroecology and kind of like conservation grazing, all these things that show that like farming and nature can go together. It doesn't have to be, right, we fence this off and this piece bit's for human, this bit's for nature. So I don't know if Maria or Andrea, if you wanted to say anything more about some of the ways that that's possible on a farm.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because John does a lot of work to undo the work of rewilding things. You know, he's having to put cattle back onto bits of land where they've been taken off, or that they've been, you know, deer have been fenced out, and species have been lost because of that, because they actually need the animals. It all works in harmony. And so it is interesting. And textbook, it's very easy to kind of have an idea and have a flow chart, and that all looks wonderful, but nature doesn't work on the page. You know, you have to be on the ground. And John being, you know, he knows the landscape so well, you know, it's, and so he just understands it in a way that's very different to an academic. And yeah, so a lot of the work that he does naturally improves the soil and naturally improves habitats, because he loves nature. He's not fighting nature. Actually, crop growing is something that fights nature more, because you don't want pests in your field, whereas, you know, with your cattle, you know, it doesn't really, you kind of share it with you know, is part of the environment in a way that growing crops isn't. So it's a very different thing, actually, animal farming to crop farming.
Lovely, thanks, Maria. Andrea, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Oh, well, this discussion and this debate is, you know, virtually my entire professional life at the moment. As a National Park Authority, we're really working with farmers, and our strategy now is farmer-led nature recovery. So farmers, as Maria said, they've got the local knowledge. They are ideally placed to deliver the nature recovery. And that now is our strategy. And the process hopefully will be cooperation, not conflict. And all of our partner organisations, the environmental organisations and the farming organisations, have all sat round the table for over 2 years now, and discussed this endlessly. And we have a working group to work together to deliver farmer-led nature recovery in the Lake District, which is promising, but there's still, that's not to say that there aren't challenges. There are definitely challenges. You know, looking forward, farmers are going to be paid for the public goods that they have on their land. So there's various public goods that the government will fund, such as thriving plants and wildlife, beauty, heritage and engagement. Obviously, one of our main public goods that we're providing in Cumbria particularly is beauty, heritage and engagement. You know, people love the landscape. It's an agro-pastoral landscape. It's a World Heritage Site. But will that actually be funded on an equal footing with the other public goods, such as thriving plants and wildlife, remains yet to be seen. So there's a lot of work to be done, really, to make sure that people understand the importance of these different public goods in our upland landscapes. It's a really complicated issue, but that is the National Park Authority strategy now, to deliver farmer-led nature recovery.
Wonderful, thanks, Andrea. So I'm aware there's only a few minutes left. So what I want to do, Kate, if that's all right with you, I just want to show a few pictures of what people have been making. And then if you've got any questions, you might have one, Kate, that's because I think there's some Zoe in particular, there's some in the chat about people asking, like for example, Helen's got Devon close walls and wanting to learn more about their fleece property. So I'm sure you can direct people to where, and we'll send an email out afterwards with with the web links and everything of all our speakers, so you can find out more as well. But let me just quickly screen share for you, and please shout, people, if you can't see this in a minute. This is just what's come up on the Evening with Northern Yarn hashtag on Instagram, and people have emailed me some and I've kind of added them as well. I don't know if hopefully you can all see that okay. Can you see if I kind of go into more detail like that? Does the detailed view come up as well? Excellent. So we've got all sorts. We've got Sacred Nature Hannah Field doing some really nice work there. Everyone's must have very warm hands this evening. Got some crochet going on by Penny here, which is lovely. Yeah, I'm still listening despite the heat and enjoying listening to the experiences. Some lovely fair oil going on there. Pam's weaving, which is brilliant. Lovely to see that. Oh, I put this on, Joe. I'm sorry, I put yours on twice. I didn't realise you'd already posted it. You've got another post with more detail. This is from Dawn, who's not on Instagram, but she said there's some photos of Kate Davis sock pattern that she's using with John Arbon wool. We've got lots. Myron's doing a temperature blanket very fittingly and breaking into the really hot colours tonight. So that's exciting to see how that's shaping up. And we've got this really beautiful pattern shaping up here by Eden Valley Knitter. And then another really beautiful design here, currently on Sleeve Island with this one, going for 3/4 length sleeves. And then Caris is starting with it's got a really new project starting off here, which looks with using Jamieson's of Shetland yarn. And then we've got some here with some using yarn from Curated Yarn Co, which is hand dyed as well. Some nice socks here. And this is Joe's original post, which gives more details. And you can obviously follow this on the Instagram and you can see in more detail like what everyone's making. And that was my car knitting from earlier, which I was very grateful for the fact there was air conditioning in the car when I was worried I wouldn't make it back up the M5. And finally, very appropriate to finish with, we've got some Methera from Kate on the go. This one by That Lass doing the wool and honey sweater that I know a few people have been making recently. It was on Sewing Bee, wasn't it? One of the contestants on Sewing Bee wore it and it was really beautiful. It looks lovely in that colour. Another really beautiful sweater coming on, more sleeve work getting done. And yeah, Heather's got another Methera make which is Kate's got a knit along at the moment, so using the Methera. So this is what Heather's working on for that. So thank you so much everyone for sharing. Let me just stop a moment. Yeah, it's really lovely, and you've done. Yeah, please look at the photos afterwards if you'd like to, because there's some really nice things that people are doing, and I can see, like, I don't know if you've got your cameras on and you're working. Do you want to just let's just do a quick wave of look at all the projects coming up now. That's brilliant. Oh, that's so lovely. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, Maria's knitting as well. That's brilliant. So, Kate, over to you. Do you want to squeeze in one last question? What do you want to do?
I don't think I've any more questions. I had more, but it's just been really interesting to listen to everybody again. I've learned loads, lots of new things. It's been really interesting hearing about how things are changing but all the positive things that are going on. And people are doing with British wool, and look at everybody who's come along tonight to hear more about British wool. It's really encouraging, and thank you to our panel. Thank you, Becky, for doing all the techie stuff, and thank you everybody who's come along. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you have too, and let's do another one in a few years.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for organising it, Kate. It's just a joy to come together and talk about wool, and just to have so many enthusiastic wool experts. I was a bit embarrassed holding up this because that's all I'm able to knit. It's like something plain and a little scarf, but still
beautiful.
It's a joy to do it. But yeah, it's a real joy to be here tonight. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks everybody. And there's Becky.
All the nice comments as well in the chat, people. From everyone. I've been reading them all. They're great. Lovely.
Oh, lovely. I'm going to go and read them all now. But thanks again, everyone. Keep cool and keep crafting with British wool. I think you're awesome.
Bye everyone. Thank you.
Night night.
Bye bye. Thank you.